So, how are you?
I am well. Yesterday was a very good day, as you know. So um, I'm really pleased with the way that turned out, and we're chipping away.
Explain to me your request and why you wanted the request and then that first denial.
What I was sort of interested in doing was figuring out how I could thread the needle a little bit, push the boundaries, or see where the boundaries are as to what would or would not be disclosable regarding these license plate reading cameras. And the way I thought best to do that was to ask the county. Now, mind you, you remember the village here in Scarsdale, we abandoned our project, but it's my understanding that the county has potentially dozens or hundreds of these cameras. So the way I thought I'd go about it was to ask the county for the specific dates, times, and locations that they had captured my vehicle, my personal vehicle. And I knew that there were some responses that they would use to deny me, but I did think that by making the request the way I made it, I had finessed it sufficiently that I'd be able to overcome those objections. And in fact, they did deny me. They denied me on three grounds initially, those grounds being exactly what I had expected, that if they disclosed the information, it would constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy, that it would interfere with law enforcement investigations, and that it would reveal criminal investigative techniques or procedures. That was sort of what I expected, but because I had made my request so specific, I was able to go back to them with the appeal and say, personal privacy doesn't fly because I'm asking about my own vehicle. So that one doesn't fly. Interfering with law enforcement investigations, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not under investigation.
We
So I hope, and if I were, I'd hope that you'd tell me that I was, right? So that one really doesn't wash either. Revealing criminal investigative techniques or procedures, the end of that exemption is except routine techniques and procedures. My argument there was there's nothing unique about these ALPRs. They're commonplace, they're routine. They have become, unfortunately, somewhat of a standard policing practice. So that argument shouldn't really hold water either. And that was my appeal. And yesterday I found out that my appeal had been granted.
So, what was the time frame for all this from your original request to yesterday?
I had filed my original request on July 14th,
So, it's been
and
some time.
it has been. Typically, what happens in New York, there are statutory guidelines for responses. I don't know all the numbers. It's like 20 business days to get a response, which is basically a month right there. But they have 10 days. They have 10 days to give you an initial response, and on the 10th day they'll say, we received your request and we'll be back to you within the next 20 days." Right? So, and they typically drag it out to the last possible day. That's just how they roll. I've seen it on the county level, I've seen it on the village level. It always goes down to the wire. I don't know if I would think that's deliberate, but I don't know for sure. The county should turn over the requested documents together with any redactions. The redactions should only be really for perhaps third parties that have nothing to do with me, which I don't really care about anyway. I would need to give them a little bit of time to compile it, which really shouldn't take them all that long. All they have to do is put my license plate number into the system and search on it. So the advice that I've been given was to allow several days up to a week for that to happen.
So, what do you think will come back? What are you expecting?
At this point, I'm expecting exactly what I requested, which is the dates, times, and locations over the past year that my vehicle was captured.
So, okay, so here's a question. So, I live in a city where the city's retention record is 180 days.
Hmm.
What is the retention record there? And if I live here, can I request the last year? Will it come up, or would I only expect to get 180 days?
So that's a good question. I don't know what the retention. I had been told the retention on the county level here was 2 years.
Hmm.
And I don't know that to be a fact. I asked for a year somewhat randomly and arbitrarily. If they have a year, they'll give me a year. If they come back and say, "Hey, we only keep 180 days," then that's what I expect I'll get.
Okay.
So I would guess that what I'll get back is um, whatever the retention schedule is, up to a year's worth.
You know, what I find about your process is you have been very patient. And in going through the motions and waiting for replies and then coming back with an appeal, in other places people haven't been so lucky. They've actually had to go to court and sue for this information. How do you feel about that?
Um, well, I don't feel good that people have to go. I mean, I may wind up in court on a similar matter. I don't know yet. That'll sort of depend on the village, not the county. I think at this point, I hope at this point I'm done with the county. Um, it's a process, Jen, and it's a I don't want to say it's a complicated process, but it's a nuanced process. And as I told you last time we spoke, you need to familiarize yourself with these freedom of information laws so that you can thread that needle and ask in a way that increases the probability that you'll succeed either on your initial request or on your appeal. Um, I know that folks who are not familiar with the process, not familiar with the law, maybe tend to do it on a more haphazard basis, and they will seize on any opportunity they can to turn you down. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So if you go in, um, you've got to go in prepared. You've got to go in understanding the law, understanding, and you have to think ahead. Um, and that's, and I don't know, obviously I don't know the Arizona law. I am unfortunately fairly familiar with the New York law at this point. I wish I weren't. Um, but the better prepared and the better you fine tune and hone your approach, the better chances you have to succeed.
So I don't know if you've been following. I think you've been following my reporting out here where Sedona, they just brought down all the flock cameras last
Hmm.
weekend.
Hmm.
Um, the leader on that is a Sandy Boyce, and
Hmm.
she started up a website, Live Free AZ. And she is putting together kind of a how-to for people to start to FOIA these records. If you were able to talk to these folks out here in Arizona, whether they're in Sedona, Flagstaff, Prescott, Goodyear, Arizona, what would be your advice in this process going into it as far as expectations?
I think number one, again, familiarize yourself with the law so that you know what you should be able to get legally, relatively cheaply, if not free, from the government with regard to the records. Um, Absolutely, and as Sandy did, and I know many other people did, show up at the community meetings, interact with your council, your trustees, whatever you happen to call them. In fact, there were a couple of headlines yesterday, just to give you an example, that I got in an alert. I don't know if you saw them, but the city of Evanston, Illinois, canceled its contract with Flock, right? And the cameras were taken down. And then somehow Flock, apparently without permission, went back in and reinstalled them. And the city has now covered them with plastic bags to ensure that they're not capturing anybody's license plates. The other interesting story yesterday was the federal government, the Trump administration, weighing in the case in Norfolk, Virginia. So now the Trump administration is beginning to put its thumb on the scale by filing a statement of interest in that Norfolk case. And my point in telling you this is I thought those two articles were significant enough that I sent them to my board of trustees here in Scarsdale. And I said, hey, I know this issue isn't going away. I know it's going to be revisited. You need to know what's going on out there in the world so that when the time comes, you don't feign ignorance that you didn't know what was going on. So you have to keep local leaders engaged so that they can't throw their hands up and say, "Oh my, we had no idea what was going on. We didn't know that ICE and DHS and DEA and the FBI were accessing this information." Um, it's just because as you and I discussed last time, this has been building and growing on a community by community basis from the ground up and not from the top down. So it behooves all of us to get involved and make sure that our community leaders know, um, for the most part, I think that we disapprove of this, and let them know what's going on elsewhere so that they can't say, wow, we had no idea.
This is so important what you are saying. My experience here in Arizona has been when law enforcement, and again, I have all respect for law enforcement. None of this work that I have done has been anti-police or anything like that.
Mhm.
I really hope that that message comes across. When law enforcement goes to our city councils here in Arizona, the council members have no idea how this technology works. It is so evident in their questions and in their responses. I recently put together just a very short collage of council members saying, well, people just, are used to this kind of technology. What's one more thing on our streets?
I also think about our personal information already captured through Face ID and TikTok and fingerprint ID and everything else. And so I don't know where license plate scanning takes it to a different level, because our society has already gone in a direction where we've given up a lot of our private information.
They have no idea how this technology works. And I don't know if it's my social media feed, but I am getting all this information now about digital ID, and that we are now crossing into a world very quickly, it appears, that everything we do and any of the freedoms that we are going to have in the future will be tied to how much privacy our lawmakers have given up. And so I just, I appreciate you bringing that up and how important it is. Maybe we need to be ahead of the game by providing the information to our city councils and our cities instead of just assuming that that information will be provided to them at the time. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
100%, yes.
What do you think about this digital ID? Do you think that, the license plate readers, do you think that information could one day be tied into the freedoms that we have in the future?
I don't think that anything is off the table in that regard. I think it's all on the table. And as I mentioned to you last time, I mean, this situation sort of caught me by surprise when it popped up here locally. I didn't really understand the extent to which this had grown nationwide, tens of thousands of cameras in thousands of municipalities. So I don't know exactly what happened. It feels as though now something maybe has changed and the tide has turned. I'm not quite sure what that's about or why. What happened here? What happened in Sedona? What happened in Evanston? Big battle now in Eugene, Oregon, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. There's a lot happening. So I don't know. Maybe folks have just sort of gotten more aware. Our privacies are very much at risk.
It was really cute when I was interviewing Sandy out of Sedona. Sandy from Sedona, that's what I call
Mhm.
her. She was saying she was just driving around one day and all of a sudden there were these cameras.
And it was just chilling. The feeling is just horrible. You feel like you're in prison.
And that's how she first found out about it. And I think that's how a lot of people are finding out what these cameras are. And when the folks out here where I live, they were having their protest one day and they're literally marching with their signs right under the flock cameras. And I asked them, do you know what that camera is? Now, granted, we're told that these cameras don't have facial recognition. Doesn't mean that they
Mhm.
couldn't in the future, but people
Mhm.
have no idea what these cameras.
No idea.
They have no.
No idea. And that's part of the problem again, which is that these contracts are being signed surreptitiously, no public discussion, no public debate, no invitation, no solicitation of public input. One day they're not there, and the next day they are. And again, had it not been for a woman here locally who has picked up where the local newspaper left off, we might still be in the dark, and who knows, the contract might have gone forward. The appeal, that the decision that I got yesterday did make reference to a case that I was unaware of. They found that license plate readers are tantamount to speed or red light cameras. So they're not making any distinction between a license plate reader and a red light camera or a speed camera, which, at least here in the state of New York, should make it fairly easy to get more information about where they are.
Well, I just appreciate all the work that you're doing out there and the advice that you're giving the folks here in Arizona, because I think we have a lot to learn from your experience, your research, and everything that you're doing out there. And I hope we stay in touch.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah,
No doubt.
thank you. I just
No,
appreciate it.
my pleasure, Jen. It's always a pleasure to chat.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. And I like your microphone. You sound good.
Hey, it's thanks to you. Thanks to our first conversation. I hope I do sound better.
Oh, you sound great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much and have a
All right.
great day.
Okay, you too.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.